Hey, Shay.
Hey, Anna. What a week.
Yeah, it's been very heavy for U.S. educators with the shooting at Robb Elementary School in Texas on May 24th.
Yeah. So before we start, we just want to acknowledge that heaviness.
U.S. educators are not only scared for their own safety, but also tasked with helping their students process the tragedy. So much needs to be done so that no teacher, child, or family ever needs to go through this again.
Yeah, it's tough. Just it's hard to find words.
Yeah. So we're going to make a hard pivot here, so bear with us. Did you know that worldwide, people spend on average 2 hours and 27 minutes per day on social media?
Oh, that's a lot.
Yes, no joke. Obviously, it's just an average, but I'm honestly not surprised. I'm sure I'm using social media way more than I should be.
Me too. I put timers on social media for that exact purpose.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah. Hey, where'd you get that statistic, by the way?
So it's the 2022 Global Digital Overview Report that Hootsuite and We Are Social put out every year. It's super comprehensive. They break it down by platform, by country, and they do it every year. I started using this report a few years ago when I first started teaching social media marketing.
Interesting. So, listeners, you may have guessed by now what our focus for today's episode is. We're not just geeking out at statistics about social media usage.
Well, geeking out is part of it.
Totally. It is.
But our mission is really to zoom in on how we can tap the potential of social media for language learning.
Like,
Share.
post.
So cheesy.
Hello, and welcome to the Teacher Think-Aloud podcast, a podcast for reflective practice for teachers of English around the world. I'm your co-host, Shay.
And I'm Anna. So Shay, you and I have been wanting to do an episode on this for a pretty long time because we're both really interested in how social media works for learning.
Yeah, you and I have both been using social media for learning for a while, so it's exciting to finally have an entire episode dedicated to it. I think our first conversation about this was when you shared one of your ideas with me, and I started adopting it to use in my class.
Yeah, it was the living dictionary activity, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
We'll tell you about that activity and some other practical strategies in a bit, listeners. But I think to get us started, well, do we actually have to make an argument for why we would be using social media for things like literacy and language learning?
Well, I think there probably are some listeners who chose this episode because they have already bought into the idea.
Yeah.
And we don't have to sell them on why social media works for language learning. But there also might be some listeners who are dubious, right? And they're listening because they want to be swayed.
Okay. So for the naysayers, the doubtful Debbies, what do we do?
So those who might be hesitant to bring social media into the classroom, they really have some valid concerns, right? There is the possibility that social media can create distractions in an already chaotic classroom. Students are constantly checking their messages and social media pages, and it's hard to get anything done when that happens, right?
Sure, yeah. And even though we may think we're great at multitasking, research has shown that mobile phones and multitasking pretty much lead to a disrupted learning process.
Yeah, and then there are the mental health issues that surround social media. Studies have shown that social media are correlated with increased fear of missing out, which...
Oh, FOMO.
Yes, FOMO, which in turn is connected to loneliness, anxiety, even depression. In other words, the more time we spend on social media, the more we risk damaging our well-being.
Plus, working with digital natives poses a unique set of challenges and opportunities. Digital immigrant instructors.
That's us.
That is us. We speak an outdated language, that of the pre-digital age, and we may struggle to teach a population that speaks an entirely new language.
So, yeah, there are plenty of reasons not to use social media in learning.
We're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot here.
But at the same time, the prevalence of social media isn't going away, right?
Right. Going back to the 2022 digital report, in January 2022, of almost 8 billion people on the planet, 5.3 billion have mobile phones, almost 5 billion use the internet, and over 4.6 billion are active social media users. And from 2021 to 2022, there was a 10% increase in social media usage.
That's pretty wild. So, in layman's terms, everybody and their grandmother is on social media.
Yep. Grandma is on Facebook. Listeners, we'll link the report for you in our episode resource list in case you want to nerd out with us some more.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah, so the point of all of these statistics, I guess the argument is, why not take advantage of the resources we have and meet students where they are?
We know that social media is specifically designed to get users addicted, right?
Yeah.
And I can't help but wonder how we can use those addictive properties of social media to do good, you know? How can we get students addicted to learning?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a pipe dream.
No, it's actually really feasible once you know where to start. In my experience, once you get over the hurdle of actually implementing it, it leads to heightened engagement almost immediately. We are engaging students by meeting them where they are, which is online.
Right. And the collaborative opportunities that come with social media make it easier to get student buy-in, I think. That interaction that happens that we know students need, that's just really valuable. And we try to replicate that in so many other places already. And social media sort of makes it easy.
Yeah, it's authentic language learning in real time in a way that's meaningful for our students. They're engaging with their friends in a way that feels natural for them, and they're encountering language that's representative of how people actually talk.
And not to mention the fact that engaging on social media in an appropriate and productive way is an important arm of media literacy, which we're tasked with cultivating within our students.
And social media is low cost and user friendly. Students are already pretty well read, right? Most of our listeners are comfortable with using some form of social media. So we've already sort of conquered a bit of that learning curve that always comes into the conversation, right?
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you're most likely guilty of having used WhatsApp or Telegram or one of these messaging apps for teaching. Like, who hasn't created a group with their students before? You might, right. You might not think of them as social media, but they are. So really, you're already using social media and maybe even for teaching and learning.
Yeah. So don't overcomplicate it, right? I think we have a tendency to do that. Now it's just a matter of figuring out how to capitalize on these tools for the purpose of teaching and learning specifically.
Yes. So I want to specify that social media, for it to be like an effective pedagogical tool, it's not just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to use this social media because I should try to use social media. It's more intentional than that.
Totally. So notice the emphasis on the word effective, right?
Yeah.
It is very easy to get carried away with social media using technology for the sake of technology without thinking why we're using it. We're always talking about this intentionality. So pretty much the starting point for social media in your classroom needs to be objectives.
Right. If, for example, I decide, oh, I really want them to write blog posts, but I have no clear reason why a blog post is a good way to get at the writing skill I'm targeting, then it's time for me to rethink whether a blog post is necessary.
So once we've determined our objectives, the next consideration to take into account are the affordances of different social media platforms.
Affordances, maybe a new term for some listeners, but basically affordances are an object's properties that show how users may interact with that object. So for example, the way a door handle is designed suggests to us how we can use it. The design itself tells us, put your hand here and pull.
And social media platforms also suggest certain affordances based on their design features, like what is it that you want to achieve?
Right. You have to ask yourself, how can this platform contribute to my objectives? I actually created a resource a while back, a framework for using social media in the classroom. It basically lays out the affordances of different platforms and provides a structure for us to think in a principled way about how the affordances can support learning objectives when planning an activity. You can check it out on our Teachers Pay Teachers account.
So let's look at a couple of examples, Anna. This is fun. This is fun. Let's put the framework to use right now.
Yeesh.
So the idea is this, listeners, if you want to play along. First, choose one teaching context to focus on. Second, define your objectives and desired outcomes. Third, brainstorm what kinds of tasks might help reach the objectives. Fourth, consider the affordances of various social media platforms. And last, design, plan, and implement your task. Let's get to it.
So imagine you're teaching an integrated skills course on academic English, which might touch upon a variety of themes in different academic disciplines. One important aspect of this course is vocabulary learning, as they'll be encountering several new terms associated with different disciplines. So one of your course objectives is to increase students' active knowledge of words and expressions common in various academic settings. Based on this objective, you might want to find a way for students to engage with the vocabulary both inside and outside of class and practice not just the meaning, but also the use of the words in context. So listeners, what social media platform do you think could be used for this kind of task?
And while you're thinking about it, I'll let you know where my brain goes. And that is straight to the activity that you mentioned sharing with me years ago, Anna, the living dictionary. Research tells us that direct vocabulary instruction cannot account for a significant proportion of the words that learners acquire, and that the major way in which vocabulary knowledge is increased is by learning through context. And what better context than students' immediate surroundings?
Yeah, so listeners, not sure what ideas you came up with, but we think Instagram is a wonderful tool for expanding vocabulary. Since many of you are probably familiar with Instagram, I'll move through the platform's affordances pretty quickly. So it's basically an image or video-based platform. Students have to engage creatively with the word, tapping into multiple learning styles, so not just text, but visual and possibly audio. Students can then add their own comments and see multiple examples from peers. So there's this kind of peer learning going on. You can assign hashtags to the course, meaning it's easier to track the posts. You can also make use of stories and reels instead of just static posts. And the fact that Instagram is a mobile app means that the students don't really need any special technology. They're pretty much already familiar with it.
Most likely. So our activity for this is a living dictionary wiki, essentially.
Yeah.
Once a week, students post a video or image of a word from the unit that's new to them. And in the caption, they have to include the definition and an example sentence. So they have to use the word in context. Other students add their own examples in the comments. And then there is opportunity for feedback and practice in class.
And this is something that we're both really proud of because it does so many things, right?
Slam dunk.
Okay, dork.
I just love the living dictionary.
Let's move on. Imagine you're teaching an advanced argumentative writing course, and your objectives are first to have students develop critical thinking skills and the ability to support an argument with valid and clear reasoning. But then also you want them to learn to write concisely and precisely. So listeners, what do you think? What platform might work?
Okay, so I think that Twitter might be a good platform for the concision requirement that you mentioned.
Right.
And the main reason for that is its character limit, which makes it necessary for students to think about how exactly they want to formulate their argument in the most effective, immediate way.
Yeah, absolutely. The comments allow students to engage in debate. Students can also use multimodal and extra-linguistic tools, particularly common on Twitter, such as hashtags, emoji, GIFs, etc. They can make their accounts private, and the instructor can create a special hashtag for the class to make the discussion easier to track. Students can easily complete these assignments on their mobile phone or computer.
And then probably Facebook too could work for this. Facebook is an alternative to Twitter, much less focused on concision, but shares a lot of the same functionality. Plus, the nice thing about Facebook is you can create closed groups and use it more like a whole course LMS.
And it's not so uncommon to see Facebook being used as an LMS, right? A learning management system.
Right. I mean, LMS design even evolved to be reminiscent of social media platforms. I recall Schoology having a very Facebook feel.
Yeah. So whichever platform you use, here's the activity. So the instructor or another student tweets or posts a debate question or a position on an issue. This can be accompanied by an article, video, image, etc. The students must then reply to the tweet or post and assert their own opinion in a concise and clear manner. And then I think the important part here is to follow up in class. So you could have them analyze successful persuasive devices that their classmates used, deepen the discussion of complex issues, write a longer blog post. There's so much you can do.
Yeah, there are a lot of great extension opportunities from that. Nice.
Okay, your turn, Shay. Scenario.
My turn. Let's turn our attention now to storytelling. Imagine you teach a beginner to intermediate integrated skills course. You want to boost your students' ability to sequence events chronologically, describe actions in the simple past, and connect ideas with transitions. As a secondary objective, you want to build students' English comprehension, fluency, intonation, and pronunciation. So you need to create a space where students can practice these skills, receive feedback from peers and the teacher, and be able to hear themselves speak and reflect on their own performance. What do you use, listeners? This is a doozy.
There are so many options for this, but here's one you might not know about. Ever heard of the Marco Polo app?
Of course. Only because you've ranted and raved about it for years now.
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic tool. So let me tell you about it. Marco Polo is a video chat platform that allows users to send asynchronous video to an individual or group. And what's interesting about it is that they can watch the video later or watch it live. So it's kind of this hybrid synchronous asynchronous tool.
Nice.
They can rewatch the video as many times as they like, go back and watch their own, watch their classmates. And it's a mobile app, and it's just super user friendly. The start button is smack in the middle. There are some simple reactions, but all in all, it doesn't require too much getting used to.
I love how excited you get about Marco Polo.
I love it.
So, Anna, what kind of activity can you do with Marco Polo for storytelling?
Well, so the idea is to basically do like this popcorn storytelling like you would in the classroom, but you have this opportunity to give feedback, let the students engage outside of the classroom, let them rewatch their own work. So the assignment is students must tell a story together in their Marco Polo group. The first person begins the story and records herself telling it. The next student watches and then continues the story with her own video, and then repeat that until each student has added to the story. As follow-up for this extension, they can provide feedback to each other. You can provide feedback to them. You can do a dictogloss. They can rewrite variations of the story. They can write and answer their own comprehension questions, and so much more.
Cool. Yeah. Actually, Anna wrote an article about Marco Polo for this very purpose that was published in English Teaching Forum with a full explanation of the platform and more activity ideas. And we'll include that in our resources for this episode too.
Now, Shay, I feel like you've mentioned a different platform that you've used for storytelling too, something in your journalism and media studies class, right?
Yeah, I always talk about that class. It's like
it's
the only one that I'm proud of, apparently. So in that class, we did breaking news video logs using Instagram.
Oh, fun.
We already talked about the affordances of Instagram, but ultimately I chose it because I wanted students to focus on summarizing current events with a time constraint. So much like your Twitter argumentative writing, concision is key. And being concise when sharing orally, well, it's certainly not my strong suit, and a lot of students struggle with it too, from what I've observed. So students had to upload videos to Instagram that were less than a minute in length, And from there, they needed to comment on their peers' posts, asking questions about the event that took place to improve their comprehension and their ability to retell, among other things.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Another platform that I could see being useful to house that kind of activity might also be TikTok.
Ah, yes, that's where all the youngsters are now. I don't have a TikTok.
I used to have a TikTok, but I got so overwhelmed.
Do we say that, a TikTok, or do we just say TikTok? I
don't even know.
All right,
but
we're going with a TikTok.
Yeah,
yeah.
a TikTok account.
Okay.
But anyway, it's similar to Instagram Reels, which are actually modeled after TikTok in that it's used for uploading videos, but the videos can be up to 3 minutes. Used to be 15 seconds, but they've increased it. But one of the most popular features or affordances of TikTok is that you can make a duet, which allows you to do a side-by-side with another video on the app. You can also record your reactions to others' uploads, so there's a lot of opportunity for interaction.
Yeah, I see how that could be a great platform to teach concision too, given the time limitations. I'll have to see how I can work that into my tool belt soon. I think it's the only way my students will think I'm hip.
Automatically not hip when you try to be hip, Shay.
well, whatever. So at this point, some of you might be wondering, well, why can't they do all of these activities on paper?
Good question. And our answer is they absolutely can. We're not arguing against traditional methods as long as objectives are the driving force of the activity.
But here's the thing. We live in a digital world.
True that.
So if we can boost student engagement, foster collaborative learning, and help students increase their digital literacy along the way, all the while keeping our objectives in mind, why not take advantage of the tools we are given?
Yes.
So listeners, we'd love to hear from you. How are you taking advantage of the tools at your fingertips? Which social media platforms have you used for teaching? And what's an example of an activity that you've done with your students on social media?
You can join the conversation on our various social media accounts. Email us via our contact form at teacherthinkaloud.com or comment via Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. We welcome your reflections, questions, and ideas.
For more resources related to today's topic, take a look at our website or our podcast anchor page, anchor.fm/teacherthinkaloud. And to help us continue exploring these topics, consider donating or purchasing Honest Framework for using social media. Check out our offerings at teacherthinkaloud.com/support-us.
Or consider sharing this episode with a colleague and help expand our reach.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Teacher Think Aloud podcast. And until next time, happy teaching.
And happy reflecting.